Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Fridays wherever you may be across this great nation or this great world. We are in the midst of a full-on calamity, or at least we were earlier today in my hometown of Nashville. They shut down Nashville area schools. So if you hear kids screaming in the background, that's probably my kids running around everywhere. And on top of that, if you are paying attention, we also have got snow here. So they shut down schools for the flu, and now we have the snow. So we have a snow flu situation going on in Nashville right now. So many kids have the flu that they shut down schools, and simultaneously the White Death has arrived. It's like Wuhan in Nashville. The entire city is shut down. The snow flu has struck. This is one of the great relics, by the way, of the Nashville school calendar. They give 10 days a year for snow. And we almost never, ever come near having 10 days of snow. So they just decided with a tiny little bit of snow that was coming in last night, you know what, all these kids have the flu, we're going to shut it down, and we're not going to have any issues about it. But again, the snow flu has arrived in Nashville. I know everybody's talking about the coronavirus and how serious it is and how it shut down Wuhan, China. You ain't seen nothing yet. Nashville is the Wuhan of the United States right now, with the snow and the flu simultaneously arriving. I'm not sure, honestly, if we're all going to survive. This could be the last Outkick the Show I ever do. The snow flu might get the better of me. I'm not even worried about the coronavirus right now because the snow flu is so much worse. All right, we got a lot to get to. I got a loaded show for you. 13 teams can win the College Football National Championship in the wake of the 2020 signing classes being complete. We got the XFL arriving. How many of you will actually watch? James Carville tees off. I got some quotes for you that are going to make your eyebrows raise. Gayle King controversy surrounding her questions about Kobe Bryant. Iowa is a total mess as the caucus basically descends into chaos. Joe Biden is on the ropes as New Hampshire prepares to vote in their presidential primary. All of that still to come, plus NBA trade season. And so we begin with 13 teams that can win a college football national championship. All right. How many of you out there, I want to see this in the comments, how many of you out there has a friend who will say recruiting classes don't matter? If you have a friend, it might even be you, if you know someone who will say recruiting classes don't matter, 4 and 5 stars are overrated, you're a loser for paying attention to this. How many of you have a friend out there that will adopt that perspective? If you do, I want you to grab this show. Later on, we will clip this segment, and I want you to share this with them. All right? These are points of data which will irrefutably refute the idea that recruiting class rankings don't matter. Here's a great stat for you to use. 23 of the last 24 national champions have averaged at least 2 national title top 10 recruiting classes in the 4 years before they won the national championship. Let me repeat that. Only Oklahoma in 2000 has won a national championship without at least 2 top 10 recruiting class consensus ratings in the 4 years before they won the championship. And since we have arrived at the playoff, the average number of top 10 recruiting classes that a college football champion has had in the 6 years of the playoff era, 3.2. All right? So as the playoff arrives, the importance of having top talent matters even more, which actually makes a lot of sense, right? Because now you have to win 2 tough games in order to be a national champion as opposed to 1 tough game. So, who are the 13 teams that can win a national championship in 2020? I'll tell you, all right? This is basically a done proximity here. 4 teams have 4 teams have 4, sorry, let me reset here. Too many numbers. 2 teams have 4 straight top 10 recruiting classes coming into 2020. They are Alabama and Georgia. Alabama and Georgia will be the two most talented teams in the country in 2020. By the way, they play a regular season game, okay, in 2020. There are five teams that have 3 top 10 recruiting classes. Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, Oklahoma, and Texas. So really, based on our data since the playoff began, there are really 7 teams that are likely to win a national championship. One of these 7 will be your national champion in 2020. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, Oklahoma, or Texas, okay? Then there are a bunch more teams with 2 top 10 recruiting classes: Auburn, Michigan, USC, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and Florida. That's the 13. The final group there: Auburn, Michigan, USC, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and Florida. Now, what's interesting about this, for your friend who says recruiting class rankings don't matter, there are 15 teams right now favored on Fox Bet, the top 15 to win a national championship. 13 of them are the teams that I just told you right now. The only 2 teams that are favored to win a national championship that don't have at least 2 top 10 recruiting classes are Penn State, and they had a number 6 and a number 12 in addition to more top 15. So they had 4 top 15 recruiting classes, and Wisconsin. Now you can argue that Paul Chryst is the best possible coach in all of college football, because Wisconsin is pretty much garbage when it comes to recruiting. Their last 4 years, they have been 39, 45, 29, and 25. They have had 1 top 25 recruiting class, yet they have got one whale of a system in place thanks to Paul Chryst. So those are the 13 teams that can win a championship in college football. You can go check it out at Outkick, and you will be ready and able to understand all of the differences here, all right? Now let's move on. The XFL begins play on Saturday. I asked you, I was kind of surprised by the results. How many of you will watch the XFL? If you will watch the XFL, say yes. If you want, say no on both Facebook and on Periscope right now. Will you watch the XFL? Yes or no? I asked that question on my Twitter poll, and 63% of you, with 20,000 votes being cast, 63% of you said you will watch the XFL. And I'm impressed by all of the yeses that I am seeing right here, right now. Games will be on Fox, FS1, ESPN, and ABC. Well-distributed games. I'm curious to see how it does. I will be watching them. We'll be talking about gambling on it on FS1 on Lock It In a little bit. By the way, thanks to the 642,000 of you who watched last Saturday's Lock It In. It's the most watched Lock It In show ever. 642,000 of you. That is a big time collection of talent. The NBA trade season has come and gone. The NBA ratings continue to tank. People were hoping maybe something crazy would happen in the trade season. Nothing happened. Nothing happened in the NBA trade season by and large. On Wednesday night, most recent dates that I have seen for the NBA. I'll talk about the trades in a second. My 500-pound life, I got to pull this up for you again, because this even blew me away. I've made fun of the NBA ratings tanking, but even this blew me away. All right, are you ready? The NBA on ESPN, its 2 top games on Wednesday night were the Clippers against the Miami Heat, pretty big game. And also they had Orlando against Boston, all right? Both of the NBA games were beaten by TLC shows going head-to-head at the same time. What were the TLC shows called? You ready? My 600-pound life and 1,000-pound sisters. The NBA was beaten head-to-head on Wednesday night by 1,000-pound sisters and by my 600-pound wife on TLC. Not making this up. That's real data that I will share with you on Twitter in a little bit. That ain't good. The numbers are tanking. Even Bill Simmons tweeted last night during the game between the Lakers and the Rockets, this is unwatchable, basically. No wonder the ratings are tanking, and he's one of the biggest defenders of all time, all right? D'Angelo Russell got traded to Minnesota. You got Wiggins going to the Golden State Warriors. You got Andre Iguodala, who's refused to play for the Memphis Grizzlies ever since he got traded there, got traded to the Miami Heat. You had Clint Capella go to the Atlanta Hawks. Marcus Morris go to the LA Clippers. I think that's pretty much all of the trades. The only one that could actually have a potential impact on the overall outcome, Andre Drummond went to the Cavs. The only one that could potentially have a substantial outcome of that group in the overall NBA title chase, maybe Marcus Morris to the Clippers. Maybe he could make a difference for the Clippers going up against the Lakers down the stretch. That is pretty much it. So those are all of the NBA trades. James Carville has teed off on the Democratic Party. I love James Carville. I read his books growing up. If you're a young cat out there and you don't know who James Carville is, he basically got Bill Clinton elected in 1992. He famously said, "It's the economy, stupid." He's a huge SEC fan, huge LSU Tiger guy, crazy Cajun, awesome, fun, great quote. And he was Bill Clinton's campaign manager back in 1992, running the War Room out of Little Rock. And by the way, if you want to see a good documentary, watch that story about Bill Clinton's presidential campaign back in 1992. It was fantastic. He's married to Mary Matalin. I believe they had a couple of kids, James Carville, Mary Matalin. Mary Matalin is a Republican, and they were very famous in the 90s and the early 2000s. And I think they may still be famous. I'm not sure. But they were obviously two sides of the political equation. So check it out. The War Room. It's an old school documentary now. I feel like an old man talking about it. Came out in like 92 or 93 about Bill Clinton's documentary. Okay? James Carville quotes here. All right? I want to give you an example of the problem. This is James Carville. A few weeks ago, Benjamin Applebaum, an economics writer for the New York Times, posted a snarky tweet about how LSU canceled classes for the national championship game. And then he said, do the Warren Sanders free public college proposals include LSU, or would it only apply to actual schools? You know how patronizing that is to people in the South or in the middle of the country? First, LSU has an unusually high graduation rate. But that's not the point. It's the goddamn smugness. This is from a guy who lives in New York and serves on the Times editorial board, and there's not a single person he knows that doesn't pat him on the back for that kind of tweet. He's so fucking smart. Applebaum doesn't speak for the Democratic Party, but he does represent the urbanist mindset. We can't win the Senate by looking down at people. The Democratic Party has to drive a narrative that doesn't give off vapors that we're smarter than everyone or culturally arrogant. And this is wild to me. If you went back in time to 1992 or 1988 or 1996 even, and you said the Democratic Party is going to become, instead of the party of the working man, which interestingly Donald Trump now is the party of the working man. He's made the Republican Party, at least under him, the party of the working man. And the Democrats have become elitist cultural snobs. Nobody would have believed you. Nobody would have believed that the Democratic Party that elected Bill Clinton in 1992 and 1996, or even Barack Obama in 2008, was going to become an elitist, cultural, look down on you, snob appeal party. You would have never believed that the Democratic Party was going to be in their debate saying they supported abortion for transgender people. there has been such a rush to the far left that there is this huge void in the middle part of the country that isn't being served. And I think the Democrats are in danger of losing even more of those people than Donald Trump won in 2016, right? It's unbelievable, okay? Now, this is also tying in. Here's why I think James Carville is making these statements. He's terrified that Bernie Sanders is going to be the nominee. And Bernie Sanders would be a death knell to the Democratic Party. And I think a lot of people would say if Bernie Sanders gets the nomination, we got to stop listening to Twitter. We got to stop worrying about what people are saying on Twitter. We got to start going out and talking to people in the real world. I saw a great quote out of the Iowa caucus, which was a total mess. Only 20% of the people who caucused in Iowa for the Democrats were actually on Twitter. I want to repeat that because I think it stuns a lot of people. Only 20% of the Iowa Democratic Caucus voters, these are the most active people in all of Iowa, were on Twitter, all right? And so I'll tell you right now, there's a 0% chance that I'm voting for Bernie Sanders. 0%, all right? I am in no way going to remotely consider voting for Bernie Sanders. I am a relatively middle-of-the-road guy, all right? There are a ton of people that I already know who didn't vote for Donald Trump in 2016 that have already come up to me and said, there's no way I'm voting for Bernie. Bernie has a very real chance of being the Democratic Party nominee. And he might play well on the East Coast, and he might play well on the West Coast. There ain't anybody in the middle part of the country who is undecided right now that's going to end up voting for a socialist in the middle of the greatest economy in our country's history. Bernie Sanders will lose to Donald Trump, and I don't think it'll even be remotely close. That's who James Carville is talking to, and he's talking about this because the Iowa caucus is a mess. And Joe Biden right now is on the ropes. He came in fourth in the Iowa caucus. Right now he's polling at fourth in New Hampshire. This is a potential unmitigated disaster in progress for the Democratic Party. The reason why Donald Trump has suddenly surged to minus 150 to be reelected is because Joe Biden was the best candidate that the Democratic Party could run against Donald Trump to appeal to people in the Midwest. I'm going to be straight up and honest with you. Bernie Sanders is going to get crushed, all right? Bernie has no chance, in my opinion, of beating Donald Trump. He might win the popular vote because he might be popular in California. He might be popular in New York State. He ain't winning Florida. He's not going to win North Carolina. He's not going to win Ohio. I don't think he'll win Pennsylvania. I think Bernie will get wiped off the face of the Electoral College map by Donald Trump. I don't think Elizabeth Warren will do any better than Hillary Clinton. I don't think, personally, that Mayor Pete is going to suddenly motivate black voters who have no interest in him whatsoever right now. They will mobilize a little bit because he's a Democrat, but I think being gay is a major issue for a lot of black voters, especially in the South, who are not going to show up and support Mayor Pete. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care what your sexuality is. I think that Mayor Pete is a decent candidate because I think he's fairly middle of the road. But if you think a huge black turnout is going to happen in Philadelphia and it's going to happen in Detroit, in Pennsylvania, and in Michigan battlegrounds, or Milwaukee, where you need to turn out, Cleveland, in the Midwest where this election is going to be decided, you are crazy, all right? That's just not going to happen. That is a big obstacle, I believe, for Mayor Pete's candidacy. It's why he hasn't connected at all to a large extent with minority voters, okay? So he would have to pick, I think, probably a black running mate and then hope that that's going to help in some way. But I don't think he's going to turn out the audience that you need to turn out in terms of total voters in order to win. I also don't believe that Klobuchar, however you pronounce her name, has any real chance of getting the nomination. I think the best nominee that the Democrats are going to end up with, and I don't think he's going to get it, but I think it's actually Bloomberg. Because Bloomberg, and this would be crazy, can you imagine if Bloomberg, who is a Republican who has turned into a Democrat from New York, ended up running against Donald Trump, who was a Democrat who turned into a Republican from New York, who knows what in the world might happen, right? The whole thing might be crazy, but I think Bloomberg would be the best one to go head-to-head with Donald Trump because he will potentially spend billions of dollars in all of these competitive marketplaces, and I think he could go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump better than anybody else. But I think you have to make Donald Trump a substantial favorite in this election right now based on what we saw in Iowa, which was just a total mess. The AP has basically said this thing is such a mess, we're not even going to go out and say who is going to actually be a winner here, which means what happens in New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina before we get to the Super Tuesday primary states will be massive. Finally, Gayle King is being criticized. I don't know if you saw this, for asking Lisa Leslie, I believe it was, about Kobe Bryant's legacy. Did you guys see this? Gayle King is a newscaster. I think it was with CBS. And she asked Lisa Leslie about Kobe's legacy and how the sexual assault factors in. And she's getting crushed. And I think this is crazy. Look, we talked about Kobe's legacy a lot. I wrote about it, everything else. I think that it is appropriate in the immediate aftermath of somebody dying to not immediately say the worst thing that they might have been accused of in their life, right? So when someone dies, I tend to give them the benefit of the doubt for a while. I think it's fine if you want to link the fact that he was accused of sexual assault. I think that's perfectly fine. But when someone has immediately died, I think you can probably wait 24 or 48 hours to consider the larger context. But I have to say this. It's perfectly acceptable to talk about Kobe Bryant's legacy in light of the fact that he was charged with rape. This is a big deal. Most people in life will not be charged with rape. Most people will not buy off their accuser in their life. I don't know whether or not Kobe did it, but I do know that if you bring that charge out, it's 100% legitimate to consider it within the context of his life. And so this idea that a journalist should be shamed because he or she talks about the larger context of a famous person's life is wild to me. Much like I think it's crazy that some people said, hey, we need to make Kobe the logo in the NBA. You're going to make the guy who got accused of rape and bought off his accuser the literal face of the NBA? I don't agree with that, all right? I think that's crazy. Also, I thought it was completely appropriate to ask, how in the world does Kobe Bryant get his jersey retired, 2 of them, mind you, 8 and 24, in the middle of the Harvey Weinstein era in Hollywood? And how in the world did he win an Oscar at the Me Too Oscars? Those are all completely legitimate questions to ask. He is a famous person who has dark history at times in his life. When someone dies, eventually we go to examining the whole totality of their life. Now, I'm not somebody who says you judge somebody entirely based on the worst moment of their life, but it is interesting who gets redemption and who does not. O.J. Simpson, it seems clear to say, never going to get redemption, even though he was found not guilty of double murder. Mike Tyson, found guilty of rape, serves time in an Indiana prison. He's clearly gotten redemption. He's a lovable guy now. What makes one guy get redemption, another guy not get redemption, is, I think, a very interesting question. Why does someone, Ray Lewis, got charged with double murder, went on trial for it, has a statue outside of Baltimore Ravens Stadium, and almost no one even brings up the fact that he went on trial for double murder and nobody's ever been convicted in that case. It's really interesting to think about in the world of sports, using athletics as a prism, who gets redemption and who does not. But I didn't see anything wrong with what Gayle King did. Kobe Bryant's legacy includes a rape charge. That's very fair to ask about as you kind of contemplate what his overall legend and also what his overall legacy is going to be. All right. Love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. We'll be live at 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central, 2:30 Mountain, 1:30 Pacific. This is Outkick the Show. We do Outkick the coverage. Go sign up for our podcast, and also DBAP unless you need to SBAP. We'll be talking XFL and more on Lock It In a little bit. Thank you, guys. Kisses. Hope everybody in the Nashville area survives the snow flu. Like I said, it's maybe even worse than the coronavirus. I'll see you guys. DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. I am Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. Love you. Thank you, Facebook.